Hey guys, this will be video 21 for the Gibson Les Paul custom restoration. I'm going to dive right in because I have a ton of information that I want to try to cover in this one video because it will allow me to move into the next state of the build, which is going to be completely different from what we've covered. So, I think it was in the last video I mentioned that make note of the level of the fretboard surface and how it didn't warp or twist or change or anything like that. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to check the camera, find out roughly. I have a tendency of getting a little bit too high. So what I'm going to try to discuss in this video is the fact that after doing all that mass route work on the back, the fretboard surface did not change at all. And this is why, and I'm not going to start talking about why I do the precision rough out first. It's just that I learned over time that you didn't need a lot of massive wood left over and then work down to a finished state. Because if you were really roughing out your leaves with a real cautious eye, that stuff didn't change anyway. So I still have a perfectly flat fretboard surface. And obviously the headstock followed with it. So I'm just going to grab a straight edge and then we're going to put this behind us. Alright, I'm going to just get behind the camera and keep in mind that's the original, those two lines are the original lines there. There's a dash line right there that you probably can't see. That's the first fret location, and then there's a dash line right there which is the 12th fret location. And then obviously here's all of the lines, and I hope it shows up on the camera. Let me just twist it and then hope that you can see them. Those are the layout lines where I did the tenon, where I drew the tenon on there, and then obviously those points right there. So where I'm going with this, it proves that we didn't have to do any surface sanding. I'm going to get behind the camera and I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to just watch what I'm doing. That's the base leaf. Now we're going to go to the treble leaf. Surface, I should say. Very nice. And then you can even, I might not be able to get it in the camera, but then you can do a cross, tile guys know how to do this. You do a cross dimensional, like from the bottom right corner to the upper left corner, and then the bottom left corner to the upper right corner. Same thing. It's perfectly, and what that does, that guarantees you don't have a twist. And I'm not going to start talking about that, just know that it does. When you get to the back surface, same thing. It would be nice if we could take this little aluminum straight edge here and put it on there, but because of the distance from the curve here to the curve there, this is too long. Just by maybe 1/4 of an inch. It's kind of frustrating because I so wanted to show that. So the only way I can show that is you can take like a Stuart McDonald fretboard block, or a piece of maple that you know is perfectly flat. Meaning, what I'm saying, if you order this from Stuart McDonald, it's guaranteed to be flat, right? It's a tool. It was machined to be flat. It's perfectly trustworthy is what I'm saying. So basically what you're doing, I'm going to get this in the camera, lay that up there at about the 12th fret location, because after the 12th fret it starts climbing up. You're going to see daylight. So take it to about the 12th fret location, take it to the center, and then just look for daylight. You're looking for negative space. You're looking for negative space. That's negative space when you see the daylight, or I call it negative space. That's negative space to me because it's not part of the workpiece. So what I'm saying is, from a standpoint of marrying positive space to another piece of positive space that we know that we can trust, we're perfectly flat on the back. So it's finished. There's no more shaping to be done. It's ready to be primed and painted. So I don't have to worry about making pencil marks, or if I was going to clear finish this with some stain of some sort, then I'm ready to start start doing that work. So a little more shaping to be done here, and keep in mind this fret, the neck is still going to have about a 32nd of an inch taken off of both sides. And I hope I was in the camera, but we've already talked about that enough to know that when you get to this point, all you want to do is just take a template that you trust and just make sure that your lines are staying in order. All right, I'm going to stop talking about that because I have a ton of stuff to cover here. All right, let me get that off the table. Compound, convex versus concave shaping. I'm just going to put this in the camera and let you look at it. It's really beautiful. It's turning out really incredible. I mean, and I'm not going to say I'm surprised. I mean, I've done this so many times, I know what I'm looking for now. But convex, meaning this is convexed. When I first started building guitars, the mistake I made, I thought this was turned into more of a convex area, but it doesn't. Every guitar I've ever picked up that is truly a professional manufactured guitar, that convex shape, regardless of what the radius is, flares out and remains convex all the way out to the end, and then all of a sudden it turns into a compound transition into a flat, because now you're transitioning into a flat space. We've already discussed that when I married up the top repair. This is critical, beyond critical. This is the most so important, especially if you're doing stain grade work or a finish, or let's say you've already got your veneer on here. And I'm not going to start talking about that, but keep that flat, keep that very flat right there. And then if anything, start making certain that when you're doing your shaping work, that you're always riding up and over, or don't start cutting into it, because you'll severely weaken your neck or your headstock to the neck transition. So I think that's covered enough. Do you do a volute or do you not do a volute? This client wanted the volute because of the era of this guitar. We were doing everything we could to keep it historically accurate, but the width of my wood was so narrow in the way I was roughing it out, and this wood had already acclimated to my shop for a good 3 to 4 months. I didn't want to take a chance of ordering a different piece, a bigger piece of bird's eye maple, just so I could get a volute, and then come to find out that wood is not trustworthy. So he and I both discussed this briefly. We decided to not go with the volute. I told him, I said, I'll put the volute in there if I can get it out of the wood, but not at the expense of the orientation of the rings or the grain and stuff like that. We couldn't get a volute. That's not the end of the world, though. To 99% of the pro guitar players out there, they don't like the volute. And the volute was an attempt to strengthen an area that was not necessarily weak. It's just that area had so much material routed out of it because they weren't using Allen head truss rods, and the engineering had not made it yet. There was just so much wood, and they were attempting to do. So they did the volute, and then the volute is literally a ½ inch above the area that needs to be protected. So it was completely unnecessary. All right, so I'm going to stop talking about volutes. But it does depend on the situation. If back to that personal situation where if someone said, hey, this was our late child's guitar and it got damaged in a tornado and we really want to restore it, somehow or another, I'm going to get a volute there. And I'm going to, if the kid always wanted a Floyd Rose, we're going to put a Floyd Rose on that body. We're going to do it exactly the way, who wanted it. So there's certain circumstances where order the new wood and tell them it's going to be another month or two wait, because I got to make sure this wood acclimates and things like that. So you'll cross that bridge as it comes. All right, did I cover enough on the neck? I told you that we're still going to get a little bit shaped off there. And then in a little while, I'm going to demonstrate how I actually cut that tenon, and I'm going to do it in real time. Very quickly, I'm going to cover binding versus binding versus lacquer, stains, tints, you name it. Let's see if I got all this on the camera. Unfortunately, the camera and the lighting is probably not going to show. Every bit of this came from Stuart McDonald. This is all the binding, and I got my question answered. I didn't have to contact them, but the small, like the multi-piece binding, the white and the black and the white and the black, white, etc., is 20 thousandths. And the outer piece ends up being 90 thousandths. So anyway, that was one of the things I mentioned about I'm going to put my ego in check. I'm going to verify this. I don't want to end up going with the 10 thousandths when it should have been 20. So anyway, and then just for another project, I bought this cream from Stu Mack, and man, I opened up the box, and the first thing I was thinking is, all right, what's the process by which I send something back? It was immediate. There's no way I'm going to use this. I wasn't planning on using it on this guitar anyway. But the reason I brought this up, and I better say this before I forget it, when you are restoring and or if you're truly wanting to create a not a replica or a fake or this, well, they call them replicas, and we know that a lot of guys are out there building replicas. Don't try to go with cream binding, because that's not authentic. Now, I'm contradicting what I just said, because I did go with cream binding on mine, but only because the whole body's going to be cream. But look at the difference. If you have to be very careful when you order your binding, order every bit of it from the same place if possible, because you will end up with, don't need to show that anymore, but you will start ending up with everybody's version of cream. I hope that shows. And if you can't see that in the camera, the one on the bottom is more vanilla cream. The one in the middle it's horrific. It looks like tangerine. It's almost as bad as the stuff from Stuart McDonald, and I'm just going to be honest. What they're sending may work in certain applications, but not the everyday application. This on the top is like an Epiphone type pick guard, but it's a pretty color. It's a real nice cream, and it's more in line. It's more in keeping with the Stuart McDonald. I'm sorry, the Stuart McDonald. The Seymour Duncan. Seymour Duncan is very, very light. It's much more like a parchment cream. It's still cream. It's not parchment. But be careful when you start doing all this mix matching with these ABS plastics. They're all different colors. I mean, those are 3 different colors of cream right there. And then here's some I got from All Parts. Now that's pretty. That's a beautiful binding. That's what I'm using on my replica. All right, I'm gonna stop talking about that, but just make note that when you're doing that that type stuff, if you're really building a vintage replica like a penguin or something like that, make sure that you really know what you're doing. Or a white falcon. I've done a lot of these. I've built, forgot about mentioning, I've built several white falcon replicas that turned out really well. But I guess where I'm going with this, for the most part, if you don't know, just stick with white binding and get really good with your lacquer tints, trans tints and stuff like that. Read about that. This is Honey Amber. I've had this close to 20 years or 18 years. Still 90% of the bottle left. Stuff will last forever. Quite frankly, I don't know why they sell some. Well, I do, because some guys are doing cabinet work, and you're spraying, or like the entire interior of a yacht, where you're working with wood and you're doing almost faux work. All right, I talked about all that stuff: the headstock, the glutes, the binding, cream versus white, clamping set up to cut out the heel / tenon flats. Let's look at our time. We are at 14 minutes. I need to pick up the pace. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to set this up and let you watch, because I want you to see a very safe way to do this. To do this cut. I didn't press that in. I just pushed it in. That's a wedge. and I put the flat side on the bottom. And I did not press it in. I just wanted it to be my helper. I've got a line I'm following back here, which was the continuation of the tenon. Hold it with your thumb. This is why I love the quick grip. Because I'm still holding this exactly where I want it. I'm able to take the quick grip. I may have to go off camera here, but hopefully not. Ease into it very gently, just give one or two small little clicks. Now on this back side of this neck, this is critical. You'll destroy it. I've already sanded this rubber surface to make sure it's soft and clean. There's no glue on it. So see how I was able to adjust that with one hand while I didn't move the one on the left. And then at this point, sorry if I wasn't in the camera, let me see if I can get that in the light. Now I'm going to pull it off the mark just to make sure nothing slipped. And now I'm going to push it back up on the mark. And now I'm going to make sure my quick grip is, I'm sorry, I hope I was in the camera. I pulled this left side down a little bit to make sure I had a visual of the mark, and then I pushed it back up, and then I clamped this with the clean backed clamp. And now I'm going to put a little bit of torque on it. Doesn't take much. And I've got this little ironing board type jig I built, little table. I love this thing. It allows me to kind of, it's my little helper, you know. And I'm going to change this to this side so it doesn't bump into the table. Let me get off camera for a second so I can get my hand on it. Alright, I'm going to check my mark again, make sure looks good. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm wasting time is what I'm doing. Okay, I'm in the camera. Now I can relax. Take my little saw. Now I can slide that out. Take my little saw. I made a pencil mark up here of the radius of the blade so that I don't think that I've got a lot of wood to take out. I only have to take out a small triangle. And I've got my thumb back here, a plant right here, and I use that flat, which I know is perpendicular to the surface, and then I literally just start easing it off. And I'm taking these two fingers and making sure that the blade, this is a true this is made in Japan. This is a Japanese flush cut saw, and they are extremely valuable. Got this at Woodcraft. I think it was like $15 or $16, maybe $20. I've had it for 17, 18 years. And you can, what I'm doing right here, I'm just kind of watching back here. And I'm not even watching the cut. I feel the blade laying on that little piece of cedar. You'd always be thinking at this point, what if I slip? Or what if I pull the saw out too far? What am I going to cut? I'm going to cut my thumb really bad. So keep that blade up in there and do very short, gentle cuts. This is maple. It's pretty hard, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of rock it through it so we don't waste time. Mahogany would cut much faster than this. Bird's eye maple. They also call it rock maple. And you can see why. Okay, I'm going to, yeah, let me just stay on this. I didn't think it was going to take this long, and I also don't want to rush this, but I'm going to just cut this freehand. But I would recommend turning the table so that you can keep your finger on that. Do not pull the saw out of your workpiece. If you let that saw ride high, you'll cut your fingertips. Okay. And this is actually a pull saw. Probably a lot of you guys are out there going, "Oh man, that idiot doesn't know how to use a saw." But I'm just trying to rock it through it. It's already ready to come loose. There it is. All right. On the camera. There's your tenon. And then come in with your surgical chisel, and then this should be clamped. Put this in a carpenter's vise. Then you can start working off that very, very small point. I'm not going to start working that because I don't want to. First off, I don't want to get hurt, because if I slip with that chisel, I'm in major trouble. So you see how I was able to do that. You can do that at 3 o'clock in the morning and not worry about waking up the neighbors. All right. Clamping setup to cut out the heel using the jig or coping saw to relieve mass. I'll talk about this very briefly because this is important. I hope that's on the camera. My dad used to ask me when I would draw a mark like that, when I would do it 2 or 3 times, he would always ask me, which one are you going to follow? In other words, you don't have to mark it 3 or 4 times. And I caught him one time. I told him, I said, I'm going to follow the darkest one. He laughed about it. But you don't have to do 2 or 3 shots. Now, what you can do here, you can put this on a carpenter's vise. You can take a coping saw, just ease that off, or you can put it up on an oscillating sander, which is what I'll do. I'm sorry, I should be showing the actual little, because we're going to be doing the tenon round, the half round, and we're going to be rounding off that corner. You could cut it off if it was massive and big. At this point, I'm pretty good with a miter saw. I could probably go over there with a miter saw and clip off the corner. But this is what I meant by don't get killed eating a candy bar. Don't right here at the last make a brutally horrific mistake if you just slow down and ease to the finish line, you'll be much more satisfied. Because you lower your relief of your risk of making a mistake. Okay, I put on here, pause the camera and do the oscillating sander. I'm not going to do that because what I was going to do, I was going to cut both of these off on the camera. We're already at 23 minutes. And then I was going to actually show you how the first shot of this tenon will probably fit right in that body, but I don't think I'm going to have time for that. So what am I going to discuss? Because I mentioned right here, go ahead and fit to the body and verify the center line. Shifting versus angle neck to align with center of bridge. Kind of talking out loud here. What you would do at that point is after you got both of them cut, then you're going to make sure this is in the camera. This is pretty important. Now you're at a point to where in a perfect world, this is very important. I mentioned in one of the very frontline videos that I was going to take just a small amount of that material off. I did not. I didn't take any of it off other than taking a perfectly square block with some sandpaper, and I literally just cleaned it up. I left all of the original mahogany in there because I didn't want to start getting thin out here. And I surely didn't want to get thin down here. So I didn't go in here and reroute a different opening. So anyway, I just cleaned up the left side, the treble side, the bass side, and cleaned up the bass, the bottom. So if all of my work is true, there's a strong possibility. Now, when I cut this side off here, I won't go ahead and round that first. I'm going to slip this up in here, and I'm going to find out, and I've found in a lot of guitars, they're not on center. This is critical because of where the cutaway fits. But there's been a lot of guitars where I found that, man, that they were off center by maybe a 1/16 of an inch. Or I hope this shows up on the camera. Or I'm going to exaggerate it. They were pitched. It was crazy. I've seen guitars that were pitched not to a visible state, but they were pitched so that the center line of the neck would follow all the way up and hit the center line of the body at the bridge location. Don't be deceived in thinking that the center line of the body at the tail, way down here at the tail, is perfectly in line with the center line up here at the heel. Very rarely are they, especially if it's a handmade guitar. They're going to be off a little bit down there, and you don't want to deceive yourself into thinking that this was a machine-made guitar. Anything before the 80s or the 70s, there was a lot of hand fitment. And when you're repairing them, you better be prepared to do some additional fitment yourself in that sense. I'm not going to start talking about that in this video because that is a video unto itself. But what I will do is just get that off because I don't like to see stuff like that in the background. All right, let me get back on point here. Discuss shifting versus the angling of a neck. In other words, shifting the neck off to either the bass side of the guitar or to the treble side in order to hit the center line. If you can shift on a perfect center line playing, that's better. But if you find yourself having to get up here and start changing the tenon, back up, slow down and punt and rethink this thing, even if you have to come into the guitar body and shave off one of the sides, because we know we're perfectly true here. I don't want to start changing Gibson's work, but if there was a mistake there, yes, I will correct it. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to start talking about how like Bigsby. I've had to install Bigsby hinges where they literally were off almost 1/8 of an inch of the center in order to get it to line up, and it's insane. Especially the big body jazz guitars where the distance starts stretching out. In other words, the distance from the center of the bridge to the end of the body. Shape sanding on a flat plane or distorted. I'll introduce that in a different video because we didn't get to open up this tenon as much as we wanted to. I'll talk about hardware finish a little bit. Is this the final call on the hardware selection? Yeah, if this is your guitar, and this is not, I'm not making this video for this owner here. This is very general conversation. We're definitely at a point now where you probably should have already made that decision about where you were going to go with the hardware finish. I hope the video lasts. Let's see where are we. Yeah, we're already up to 29 minutes. If we get cut off within the next minute or so, I'll do another video on that. I'm not going to get too crazy on taking the tape off. Things like that drive me crazy when I look down and see it. Shot a few more coats of nitro. Maybe I'll just talk about that. If we do have time to talk about the hardware, I'll get into it. All of this paint right here is going to get sanded off back to the original because there's a couple of coats of clear coat on top of this black. Every time I sand up here, it's not black, it's just clear. It's just clear lacquer. So I'll sand most every bit of this off, but what that will do is create a perfect transition from the original paint and even the original level. Right now I'm a mil thickness high. And then all of this will get sanded off and blended into our body. Then when you buff it, I just truly don't think it's ever going to show. Because I can't see them. I can barely see a hint right there. But I think once the clear coat gets on it, I hope it doesn't. You'd have to really be looking for it, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, what else can I talk about? We'll see. I'll grab some hardware and we'll go to town. That's chrome. I got this off eBay, and really good deal. This is true Nashville Advanced Plating Incorporated. This is true chrome from probably I guess the 80s or 90s. Not sure, but I think it was the same they were using in Kalamazoo. Oh, I keep putting that up there because I haven't. That's nickel. And then I'm just going to start putting some of this stuff up here so that you can kind of see. Let's see if it's in the camera. Yeah, man, we're at 30 minutes and 38 seconds. And this is nickel, which is really beautiful. I love the nickel, man. I got that backwards. It's really pretty. And then I've already shown this a little bit, but I don't want to distort anybody's view. But if you were going to do the whole zebra thing, it kind of gives you an idea of what it would look like. If you want to know my opinion, if anybody really cares, we talked about the gold. I'm not going to go off in that arena, but what would be really cool is we're going to do nickel on this. That's a given. But the cool thing about this, even if the owner decides to change, he just pulls that off, unscrews these studs, puts in gold or puts in nickel or puts in purple, whatever he wants to put in. But I think what would look really cool if the owner of this guitar is